Once upon a time, in a small African village surrounded by vast plains and verdant hills, there was a young girl named Aku. Aku had been motherless since birth, and her father, a hard-working but often absent man, had remarried a woman named Kosa. From the moment Kosa arrived in the family, she showed unparalleled cruelty towards little Aku. The girl's life turned into a whirlwind of suffering and injustice. While other children her age played and went to school, Aku had to perform exhausting household chores. Barely able to walk, Kosa would already assign her tasks impossible for a child her age. Every morning, even before the sun rose, Kosa would wake Aku brutally by shaking her and shouting, "Get up, lazy bones, there's work to be done." Aku, her eyes still sleepy, would have to get up and start her chores. She had to clean the house, wash clothes, fetch water from the well, and prepare breakfast for the whole family. However, even after completing all her tasks, Aku was often not allowed to eat until she finished her work. Sometimes she was only given a piece of stale bread or a few leftovers that no one else wanted. Food deprivation was frequent, and Aku felt her body weakening day by day. Kosa's children, 3 boys and 2 girls, followed their mother's example. They did not respect Aku and made her life even more difficult. They pushed her, insulted her, and threw stones at her. Whenever there was a dispute, it was always Aku who was blamed and punished, no matter who started it. One day, when Aku was barely 10 years old, Kosa ordered her to clean the entire courtyard. The courtyard was large and littered with debris left by Kosa's children. Aku started in the morning, but her small hands struggled to complete such a task. The scorching midday sun worsened her situation. Her delicate skin began to blister due to the heat and incessant work. Despite her efforts, the courtyard was not clean enough in Kosa's eyes. Enraged, Kosa grabbed her by the hair and dragged her to the kitchen, where she poured a bucket of cold water over her head. Shivering with cold, Aku had to start her work over again, amidst the mocking laughter of Kosa's children. Aku's nights were just as miserable as her days. Kosa denied her a proper bed, while the other family members slept in comfortable beds. Aku had to make do with a corner in the kitchen on a torn mat. The nights were often cold, and she frequently woke up with a start due to nightmares that filled her sleep. She dreamed of her lost mother, wondering what her life would have been like if she were still there. One of Kosa's most cruel punishments was depriving Aku of food, sometimes for entire days. She was only given water and a piece of stale bread. Aku felt her body weaken but drew strength from her silent prayers, hoping that one day her suffering would end. Her father, though he loved her deeply, did not notice the severity of the situation. Under Kosa's influence, he believed Aku was simply lazy and rebellious. Kosa played the role of a loving and devoted new wife to convince her husband that all the punishments inflicted on Aku were justified. Her father, exhausted from work and Kosa's manipulations, preferred to turn a blind eye to reality. Another day, while Aku was doing the laundry by the stream, Kosa arrived in a fury. One of the boys had broken a plate, and naturally, Aku was held responsible. Without giving her a chance to defend herself, Kosa hit her with a tree branch, leaving red marks on her back. The passers-by, accustomed to these scenes, turned their eyes away, preferring not to intervene. Despite the inhumane treatment she endured, Aku maintained an inner light, a sweetness and kindness that surprised everyone who met her. She willingly helped the elderly in the village, offered her assistance to young mothers, and shared the meager food scraps she managed to obtain with stray animals. This natural goodness stood in stark contrast to the environment of hatred and contempt in which she lived. Aku's life, already full of suffering, took an even darker turn on a fateful day when a false and cruel accusation was about to upend her existence. It was a morning like any other. Aku got up before dawn to start her chores. She had already fetched water from the well and prepared breakfast for the whole family. Her hands were red from the effort and her eyes were dark with fatigue. However, she never complained and performed her tasks with the same gentleness and resilience. That morning, Kosa, her cruel stepmother, seemed more irritated than usual. Her eyebrows were furrowed and her lips were pinched in anger. She watched every move Aku made with a malicious vigilance. Kosa's children, on the other hand, were playing noisily in the yard, oblivious to the hard work their stepsister was doing. Suddenly, Kosa entered the kitchen where Aku was washing the dishes. With an accusatory air, she brandished a small leather purse in front of Aku. "Where is the money, Aku?" she screamed, her eyes flashing with fury. Aku, surprised and frightened, looked up at Kosa. "What money, Mama Kosa?" she asked in a trembling voice. She had never dared to call her stepmother by that name, but fear made her stumble over her words. Kosa continued to shout, attracting the attention of her husband and the children, who rushed in to see what was happening. "The 50,000 CFA francs that were in this purse are gone, and you're the only one who could have taken them." Aku's father, hearing the shouting, hurried into the kitchen. His face was drawn with fatigue, but his eyes showed genuine concern. "What's going on here?" he asked, his deep voice resonating in the small room. "Aku has stolen the money," Kosa screamed, pointing an accusing finger at the girl. 50,000 CFA francs have disappeared, and I am sure it was her." Aku, with tears in her eyes, shook her head. "No, Papa, I didn't take anything. I would never steal." But Kosa was determined to have Aku punished. "Don't listen to her. She's lying. She's a thief and ungrateful. We've fed and housed her, and this is how she repays us." Aku's father, distraught and influenced by Kosa's venomous words, lost his patience. "How could you do this, Aku, after everything we've done for you?" he shouted, his voice trembling with anger, and without giving her a chance to defend herself, Kosa grabbed a stick and struck Aku violently. The pain tore through the young girl's frail body, but what hurt the most was the look of disappointment and anger in her father's eyes. The blows rained down relentlessly, and Aku, curled up on the floor, tried to protect herself as best she could with her arms. Kosa's children watched the scene with morbid fascination, their eyes gleaming with satisfaction. They did nothing to help Aku, merely watching and whispering among themselves. After what seemed like an eternity, Aku's father grabbed her by the arm and dragged her towards the door. "Get out of this house. We don't want you here anymore." Aku, her face covered in tears, begged her father, "Papa, please believe me. I didn't do anything." But her father, blinded by anger and Kosa's accusations, would hear nothing. "You are no longer my daughter, Aku. Leave and never come back." With one last desperate look at the house that had been her home, Aku was thrown outside. She fell hard to the ground, her knees scraped by the stones. The door slammed shut behind her and she heard the mocking laughter of Kosa's children. Alone and frightened, Akka ran through the village streets. Night was falling, and darkness enveloped the landscape. She didn't know where to go. Her steps led her aimlessly, and the village inhabitants, used to ignoring the misery of others, turned their eyes away as she passed by. The streets were deserted, and the silence of the night was broken only by the distant cries of nocturnal animals. Exhausted and hungry, Aku desperately searched for a place to hide. She was afraid of the shadows that seemed to close in on her, and every noise made her jump. She finally found shelter under an old, abandoned shop. The wooden planks were rotten and the walls threatened to collapse, but it was the only place she could hide from the dangers of the night. Shivering with cold and fear, Aku curled up in a corner, hugging her knees to her chest. Tears flowed silently down her cheeks, and she prayed for someone to come to her rescue. The night seemed endless. Too frightened to sleep, Aku stayed awake, listening to the sounds of the night and jumping at every creak. The memories of the blows and accusations played over and over in her mind. She wondered why life was so unfair, why she had to suffer so much when she had done nothing wrong. Morning finally arrived, but with it came no glimmer of hope. The streets began to come alive as the villagers resumed their daily activities. Aku got up painfully, her muscles sore from the uncomfortable position in which she had spent the night. She wandered the streets again, looking for something to eat, something to do. As she walked aimlessly, she caught the eye of an old woman. It was the same woman who had comforted her one evening, the one who had told her that her kindness would one day be rewarded. The old woman approached Aku, her eyes full of compassion. "My little one, what happened?" she asked in a gentle voice. Overwhelmed with emotion, Aku burst into tears. She told the old woman everything, the accusations, the beatings, the exile. The old woman listened in silence, her features hardening with anger and sadness as Aku spoke. She told the old woman everything, the accusations, the beatings, the exile. The old woman listened in silence, her features hardening with anger and sadness as Aku spoke. "Come with me, my little one," she said finally. "I will take care of you." Together they walked towards the old woman's small house on the edge of the village. Mami Ajo's house was modest but warm. Colourful flowers adorned the garden, and the inside was clean and welcoming. Mami Ajo sat Aku at the kitchen table and prepared a hot meal for her. Starving, Aku ate with gratitude, feeling for the first time in a long while a sense of security and comfort. "Tell me everything, Aku," Mami Ajo said, sitting across from her. "Tell me what happened." Aku took a deep breath and told her story. She spoke of her mother's death, her father's remarriage to Kosa, and the cruelty of her stepmother and her stepmother's children. She spoke of the impossible chores, the food deprivation, and finally, the false accusation of theft and her expulsion from the house. Mami Ajo listened attentively, her heart breaking a little more with every word. When Aku finished speaking, tears flowed silently down her cheeks. "My poor child," she said, taking Aku's hand. "No one should ever endure what you have. But know that you are safe here. You can stay with me as long as you need." In the days that followed, Aku began to recover from her ordeals under Mami Ajo's loving care. Gradually, she regained her smile. The old lady taught her how to tend the garden, cook, and manage the shop. Aku, eager to learn, absorbed everything Mami Ajo taught her with boundless gratitude. The villagers, intrigued by Aku's presence with Mami Ajo, started asking questions. Mami Ajo, with her usual wisdom, simply replied that the young girl was under her protection and needed no further explanation. The villagers, respecting the old lady, accepted her response and welcomed Aku into their community. Despite the trials she had faced, Aku never lost her sweetness and kindness. She helped the villagers with their daily tasks, looked after the children while their parents worked, and brought food to the elderly and sick. Gradually, she earned the love and respect of everyone. One day, while Aku was working in the garden, Mami Ajo came to her with a benevolent smile. "Aku, my dear, you have brought so much happiness into my life and the lives of the villagers. I am so proud of you." Aku, blushing slightly, lowered her eyes. "Thank you, Mami Ajo. I am so grateful for everything you have done for me. You gave me a second chance and a home." Mami Ajo nodded, her eyes shining with tears. "You are a blessing, Aku, and I am convinced that your kindness and resilience will one day be rewarded." Days passed, and Aku thrived under Mami Ajo's affection. She became a beautiful, polite, and respectful young woman whose kindness touched everyone she met. The pain of her past gradually faded, replaced by the warmth of the love and support she received from the old lady and the villagers. But despite her new happy life, Aku couldn't help but think about her father. She wondered how he could be so blinded by Kosa and why he chose to believe her rather than give Aku a chance to defend herself. She often prayed for him, hoping that one day he would realize his mistake and come to find her. Under Mami Ajo's attentive care, Aku had learned the values of compassion and generosity. Her reputation as an exemplary young woman had spread throughout the village. Meanwhile, Prince Kofi of the kingdom had just returned from the United States, where he had pursued his studies. Although his return was celebrated with great pomp and splendor, Prince Kofi felt a deep need to know his kingdom and his subjects beyond the palace walls. To do this, he decided to disguise himself as a simple villager to discover the reality of his people without being recognized. One morning, dressed in ordinary clothes, Kofi discreetly left the palace and headed to the village where Aku lived. He walked calmly, observing the people and listening to their conversations. The villagers were busy with their daily tasks, unaware that they were in the presence of their future king. As he approached the river, Kofi saw a young woman drawing water. Her graceful movements and serene expression captured his attention. Approaching her, he noticed the sweetness and kindness emanating from her. "Hello," Kofi said as he approached Aku. "Could you please give me some water?" Aku, surprised by the young man's gentle and polite voice, looked up and smiled. "Of course," she replied, handing him a gourd filled with fresh water. "Here you go, sir. Drink as much as you need." The prince took the gourd and drank a few sips, thanking Aku for her kindness. He was immediately struck by her respect and gentleness, rare qualities he had not often encountered in young women of her age. "My name is Kofi," he said, handing the gourd back to Aku. "And you? What's your name?" "My name is Aku," she replied with a shy smile. "I live here in the village with Mami Adjo." Intrigued, Kofi continued to talk to her, asking questions about her life and daily routine. Aku answered with simplicity and honesty, not realizing she was talking to the prince of the kingdom. Their conversation was interrupted by Mami Adjo, who came to fetch Aku to help prepare the midday meal. "I have to go now," Aku said as she stood up. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Kofi." "The pleasure is mine, Aku," replied the prince, watching her walk away with Mami Adjo. He watched her disappear into the distance, his mind filled with thoughts about the young woman he had just met. That night, back at the palace, Kofi couldn't stop thinking about Aku. Her kindness and respect had deeply impressed him. He recalled their conversation, remembering every detail of her face and smile. He wondered how such an extraordinary young woman could live in such anonymity. The next day, Kofi decided to return to the village to see Aku again. He disguised himself once more as a simple villager and retraced his steps to the river. This time, he found her helping an old woman carry a basket of fruit. He watched the scene from a distance, admiring Aku's compassion and selflessness. When she finished helping the old woman, Kofi approached her. "Hello again, Aku," he said with a smile. "I see you're always ready to help others." Aku was surprised to see him. "Hello, Kofi. Yes, I try to help as much as I can." They continued to talk and walk together, getting to know each other better. Kofi spoke about his travels and what he had learned abroad without revealing his true identity. Aku, on her part, shared her dreams and aspirations, as well as her desire to make the world a better place. Day by day, their friendship grew. Kofi found himself increasingly attracted to Aku, not only for her beauty but also for her pure heart and kindness. He realized she had all the qualities he sought in a life partner. One day, after a long walk, Kofi made a decision. He knew that he could no longer hide his true identity. From Aku. He had to tell her the truth and hope that she would accept him despite everything. "Aku," he began, taking her hands in his, "there is something I need to tell you. I am not just Kofi, a villager. I am the prince of this kingdom. I disguised myself to understand my people, and that is how I met you." Aku looked at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "The prince? I didn't know." "I am sorry I didn't tell you the truth sooner," Kofi continued, "but know that my feelings for you are sincere. I appreciate you for who you are, not for what you can offer me as a prince." Aku remained silent for a moment, processing this revelation. Then she smiled softly. "Kofi, I am honored that you chose to tell me the truth. It doesn't matter to me whether you are a prince or not. What matters is the person I have come to know and appreciate." Kofi's heart filled with joy upon hearing these words. "Aku, would you accept to become my wife, to become the princess of this kingdom, and to share my life?" With tears in her eyes, Aku replied emotionally, "Yes, Kofi, I would be honored to become your wife and share your life." The news of their engagement spread quickly throughout the kingdom, and preparations for the royal wedding began immediately. Aku, though surprised by all the pomp and attention, adapted quickly to her new life. She received lessons from the palace ladies on etiquette and the responsibilities of a princess, but she always remained humble and generous. On the day of the wedding, the entire kingdom was in celebration. Villagers flocked to see their prince marry the sweet Aku, who had won their hearts with her kindness and respect. Mami Ajo, an honored guest, could not hold back her tears of joy as she watched her dear Aku become a princess. Over time, Aku thrived. Her story remained an example of resilience and kindness for generations to come. The reign of Queen Aku brought an era of prosperity and peace to the kingdom. Every corner of the region bore witness to the benefits of her generosity and wisdom. She was loved not only for her beauty, but also for her dedication to her people. Aku had transformed the palace into a place of benevolence, where the most vulnerable found refuge and assistance. The inhabitants praised and revered her, admiring her humility and altruism, including her own parents, who had once caused so much suffering to their daughter without even recognizing the queen she had become. Aku continued to reign with wisdom and kindness. The kingdom flourished under her rule, becoming an example of justice and compassion. Queen Aku's life was a powerful testimony to the strength of forgiveness and human resilience. Aku's story teaches us that kindness and resilience always triumph over injustices. Despite the terrible trials and injustices she endured, she retained her sweetness, kindness, and integrity. Her perseverance and good heart were ultimately rewarded with a new life filled with love and support, thanks to Mami Ajo. This story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, it is important to stay true to our values and continue to do good. Justice and recognition will come one day, and those who have suffered will finally find peace and happiness. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe and share the video. Don't forget to like and tell us the country you are following.